Alrighty, guys, already halfway there. Already halfway through Peacemaker Season 2, the third official project in the DCU. The second show, first live-action show, and the first project after the film Superman that kicked off the DCU slate officially, or rather unofficially, because, Creature Commandos officially launched the DCU, but Peacemaker Season 2 is now coming up and rounding out 2025. So we are here to talk about Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 4. This is going to be a full spoiler discussion. If you have not seen the episode, no worries, just save the segment for later, save the podcast, save the video for later, and come back once you have. Or if you don't care about spoilers, then welcome. Let's dive right in. So Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 4, is halfway done, I believe, because I think there are 8 episodes. And so by the halfway point, you think that, okay, we're now starting to get a real sense of the conflict, the things are heightening up, the tension is ratcheting to a point where you really start to get a feel for what's going to happen, and there can still be surprises. James Gunn has said that episodes 6, 7, and 8 are crazy, so maybe this season's going to take a little bit of a different approach, but you're kind of expecting things to start to come to a head, and you start to realize, okay, this is sort of where things are heading. That's at least my general expectation when shows are about halfway there. It's not that you're in the climactic moments of the show, but that you're starting to get to an idea of what those things might be, and you're starting to understand what the conflicts are, what the stakes are, and where we're heading. And Peacemaker Season 2 thus far, I have actually quite enjoyed. While I don't necessarily love the multiverse as a concept anymore, I think it's just been too tired, frankly. I think Peacemaker Season 2 has been doing it fine, has been doing it well, and last week's episode did show how you can do multiverse in a way. I get it, parallel dimensions, but multiverse in a way that can work in superhero and comic book movie and TV show genres. So it was good. It was fine. And heading into this episode, I was like, okay, so at the end of last week's episode, you see that Argus is heading for Peacemaker's house. They kind of did that in episode 2, but okay, they're heading for Peacemaker's house. He's leaving the dimension that he was just in. Let's see what happens. And I have to say, Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 4 was the first episode where I went, oh, that wasn't quite as good as the other episodes, in my personal opinion. Now, I'm not saying Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 4 was bad, or was not enjoyable. I actually quite enjoyed the episode. I thought some of the jokes were funny. I still think Tim Meadows' bird blindness, Flurry's bird blindness, wow, what a tongue twister. I think that joke is still funny. I think that for as silly in the moment as it kind of was, the Economos stalling tactics were pretty funny. I think that some of the things with Michael Rooker's character were interesting. We'll talk about the ending. We will talk about the ending. But overall, I'm not saying, again, this is a filler episode. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm not saying that literally nothing happened in this episode. I am saying that it was kind of odd how uneventful this episode actually was. I get it, there are emotional moments that are happening within this episode. There are things that you're learning about the characters. The beginning, I thought the prologue was quite interesting, of them, 3 of them discovering the portal to the door. And it turns out just to be sort of a way to get to the plot device, which is that little device thing that is opening these doors, opening these dimensional portals. Okay, that's fine. Really, the entire rest of the episode is basically, it's Peacemaker, grappling with the fact that his house, the door is being taken, so he's on the run, and then Argus is going after the door, and then Economos is stalling, and Adebayo is with him, and Vigilante's with him, and they're just all kind of hanging out in that cabin. And then, is it St. Clair? St. Clair, Michael Rooker's character, is going after Eagly. And then meanwhile, Harcourt is going to betray Peacemaker. And those are all things that are fine and are good moments. But it just feels like this season of Peacemaker, and it's a classic thing that happens, right? It's a thing that happens when you do sequel shows or you do sequels to movies. You tend to want to split up the characters. And sometimes that really works. Right? Take Lord of the Rings, for example. I know that Lord of the Rings is based on a book, but Lord of the Rings, they split up a lot of their main characters, and that seems to really work for a lot of people, and myself included. But sometimes, when you make sequel seasons of television and you make sequel movies, the tendency to split up the main characters, it just doesn't really work that well. I think of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, a recent example, where they just split Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt away from everyone else, and I just don't think it worked that well. And having all the side characters and Peacemaker just off doing their own things, because Peacemaker is off doing things in the other dimension, and he's off having his own journey of self-discovery. Meanwhile, Harcourt is kind of on and off again in the show. And we're talking about the real Harcourt here, not the other dimension Harcourt. she's kind of there, and she got a few scenes in this episode, you know, where she's going to betray Peacemaker, and I'm sure that storyline is going to pick up because it seems like that relationship is going to pick up. Adebayo's storyline, honestly, in this season has been really disappointing to me because I wanted her to really grapple with the ramifications of Waller, her mom, firing, or just even the fact that Waller's her mom. I mean, that's something that we should have explored in this season. That's really not being explored. She's just kind of, yeah, I mean, she doesn't really have a job, but, you know, that's just about it for her character. And Vigilante, I don't need Vigilante to have the deepest story arc out of all of them, but he's just kind of there. And Economos is just kind of there. And Judah Master's back. And this episode just, again, it felt like it was spinning its wheels a little bit and almost wanting to say, okay, guys, we're moving the door now. We're literally moving the doorpost. Huh? Get it? Literally moving the door. And that's about it. And so we'll wait to see what happens in next episode, because James Gunn has been teasing. And I kind of hate, honestly, I feel like we've been seeing this a lot recently where directors and actors are like, oh, wait until you see X episode of this season. It's going to blow your mind. Like the Acolyte, I remember it was episode 5. I think everyone's like, wait till episode 5. It's so insane. And then I think Agatha even, they were like, wait until the end. It's insane. The ending twist of Agatha was pretty cool. But I kind of hate how James Gunn and Steve Agee have been like, oh, wait until episode 6, 7, and 8 because they're crazy. And I'm like, this episode felt like it was just kind of stalling a little bit. You know, not filler, but just kind of stalling a little bit. I watched 30 or 40 minutes of it, however long it was, and I was like, I was entertained by it. You know, I thought the Economos jokes about, you know, when he was stalling were kind of amusing, but just really silly if you take a step back to it. And I take a step back, and I know that Peacemaker is inherently silly. I get that. But still, I mean, you're having dramatic moments, and it's almost like you want to have your cake and eat it too. Again, I want to say, you know, I am enjoying this season, right? I am enjoying what's going on here. I just think that this episode was the first one in this season, and really the first 2 seasons in general. Maybe there was 1 or 2 episodes in season 1 where I kind of went, a little slow. I think there probably were, now that I think about it in hindsight. But in this season in particular, season 2, this was the first episode where I was like, oh, okay, interesting. I liked the conversation between Harcourt and Rick Flag. I thought that was interesting, given her history with Rick Flag Jr. But again, maybe I'm hoping for a little bit more, and maybe I'm hoping for a little bit more consistency instead of, you know, episodes 1 through 5 just kind of be like, oh, that's pretty interesting, that's pretty neat, and then episode 6, 7, 8 be like, whoa, that's crazy, that's cool and all. I generally tend to like more consistency in storytelling thematically and all that kind of stuff. So anyways, episode 5 might be amazing, we might be back on track, but for this episode, I was just a little bit disappointed by what we got. And one last thing. I should mention the Michael Rooker bird thing, because we were going to talk about that earlier on. I think the character is, I mean, obviously he's cringy and he's terrible and he says some crazy things, right? And that's the point of the character, and I get that. The idea of him being an actual, I don't know if they're implying he's a metahuman or if he's just doing some kind of spiritual exercise or whatever to find Eagly. If that ends up being the plot device that leads to Eagly and leads to Peacemaker in the next episode, I don't even know. I mean, that was just weird and wacky, and it just felt like a little bit too much for me. James Gunn can get away with some crazy things in his movies and shows, and sometimes they work really well. That was one of the instances where I was sitting in my chair going, I so got pulled out of the show in this instant because I just don't know what's going on. Anyways, I don't know if I have a feeling, I just have a bad feeling that that's going to be the whole reason that they find Peacemaker and blah, 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 and he's going to be some kind of crazy bird metahuman, and I don't know, guys. Anyways, have you guys seen Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 4? Did you enjoy it more than I did? Again, I'm enjoying the show, but I thought this episode was a little bit weaker. Let me know in the comments what you thought down below.